Capitalism is evil, man. Why? Because big businesses and stuff, man. Down with the corporations. I don't want some faceless guy in a suit telling me what I can and can't do. Ah, I see. You don't know what you're talking about in the slightest.
Privacy Academy with Eric Meter.
Money is not evil. Money is not good or bad. Greed is evil, and people often tag the term greed to capitalism. That couldn't be any more wrong. Capitalism is about serving people, and with capitalism, both the consumer and the business owner are rewarded fairly. In fact, almost all criticisms I've seen about capitalism are completely backwards, and in many ways, I think this is due to the organized attack on freedom that is occurring all over the world. I will get into this more, but first, let me define the word greed, because greed is really what people hate. So what is greed? To me, I believe the term greed comes from when you sell out your beliefs and morals in order to achieve power or wealth at the cost of others. Greed is a natural trait that exists regardless of what economic structure we live in. Greed exists in capitalism, communism, and everything else as well. It's not something that can be outlawed, but with capitalism, there are natural checks and balances that prevent greed from taking over. Let me continue. Karl Marx is the founder of Marxism, or in other words, the father of communism. He believed that the proletariat, meaning the working class, was unfairly treated, and that the higher class bourgeoisie made all of their wealth by profiting off the suffering worker. This is why communism spread in Russia and China. Those countries were feudal countries where peasants had no chance for freedom and often faced the risk of starvation. Even though communism spread to these countries by their idealistic people, they failed massively, causing mass fatalities. So why has America never felt a communism? Because we are a capitalist society and not a feudal one. Instead of our working class proletariat suffering because of their work, capitalism allowed for them to have a good life. It allowed for them to have the opportunity to choose their path and reap better rewards. It allowed them to be limitless by allowing them to pursue entrepreneurship and investing. But over time, the US has been slowly pulled away from small businesses through regulations and public-private partnerships. Or in other words, private businesses that act as if they're a real business when in reality, governments fund them as a private wing of the government. Look no further than Google and other big tech companies. Capitalism is not about bureaucracy. It is not about massive corporations. It is about the average person having the ability to create their business. Capitalism is about small businesses. These small businesses are versatile and allow for powerful solutions in the society. Why is this? With a centralized business, or in other words, a monopoly on the market, the business holds the power and not the people. Let me give you a real-world example. My girlfriend manages Airbnbs for her work. Airbnb is an awful company. They basically hold all of the market and they know it. They treat their hosts awfully because they can get away with it. For someone that is a host at Airbnb, they have no say or power because Airbnb knows that they are the ones with the leverage. They can kick the host off and not care in the slightest, and that host will have nowhere to go. This is the danger of large businesses. With capitalism, small businesses thrive because people get fed up with awful businesses like Airbnb and say, you know what? I can do this better. I can treat people better. I'm going to create a competitor to Airbnb that actually cares about the hosts and the guests. And then they do. Now, because of the open market, a more powerful solution is available to both hosts and guests, which in turn makes both of their lives better. Naturally, hosts will start moving over to the better solution, even though it's a smaller business. This is a basic summary of supply and demand. Or in other words, this is how small businesses help reward the worker and how the worker helps reward small businesses. But Eric, this isn't capitalism. Capitalism is all about big businesses. That's not true. Regulations to businesses are what hurt the small businesses, not the big businesses. Big businesses have endless budgets. They can pay their way through any legal regulations. But for small business owners, these regulations can be detrimental to them, to the point where they can't even compete. For example, recently I've been looking into importing a product to the US. This product needs FDA approval to come into the US, which is ridiculous based off of what it is. But anyways, not only does the manufacturer and the receiving business need to pay for the FDA approval, but I, the importing purchaser, have to also pay for FDA approval. When I called the FDA to ask about this, I asked, what is my money being used for if the other two parties are already FDA approved? And they said, you're paying to import them into the country, to which I replied, but what is my money going towards? And of course, they repeated the same answer. It's basically a money check. To get FDA approved for this item, you're looking at around $12,000 to $15,000 a year. Now for a big business, this is a drop in the bucket. It is pennies on the dollar for them. and something that they wouldn't even think about. But to a small business, working class person, this could be completely unattainable. So in this case, who is damaged by this regulation? This is the case for all business regulations. Small businesses do not have a lot of leverage against big businesses. They can't beat them on price, speed, or stock. They have to get creative. The only way they can compete is by being nimble and actually solving problems. Without small businesses, you get huge mega companies like Airbnb that do not care about the consumer or making their life better in the slightest. But with capitalism, all parties are rewarded, especially the worker. In a capitalist society, you can choose not to start a small business, but rather you can still choose to find a business that respects you. In capitalism, you have the choice to shop around and find your employer, to search for someone who will meet your criteria of what you want out of work. If you feel like you're not respected, you can leave the business and find someone who will respect you, especially if you put the work in and make yourself a valuable asset to the company. In communism, there were still massive wealth disparities. Wealth disparities always exist because there are different types of people. Some people work in self-destructive ways, like spending all of their money on alcohol and drugs and not applying themselves. Some people save, invest, and build businesses. In capitalism, the more responsible latter will be rewarded. In capitalism, you actually have the opportunity to better your life instead of being forced to accept what you're given. In communism, you are forced to obey, and the better that you do obey, the more you will be rewarded. Capitalism is not extreme. It is not radical. It's not about limiting people. It is not far right. Capitalism is about freedom. Capitalism is about the working class and giving them the opportunity to a better life. To create small businesses with solutions so powerful that they can even rival an industry titan. To allow consumers to vote with their dollars and decide which service they want to use, not because they're forced to, but they can choose what they believe is the best option for them. Capitalism has had a massive smear campaign ran against it for years. If you ask the youth about capitalism, they will associate it with fascism, which doesn't make any sense. I recommend talking to your friends if they're anti-capitalist and hear what they have to say. Most of the time, the problem is that they're repeating the trendy notion of eat the rich or capitalism is evil, when in reality, they don't even know what capitalism is about. Capitalism is about small businesses. How many times do I have to say it? If you look at these huge corporations, they focus on efficiency. Everything is a numbers game to them. They may be good at making money, but they cannot compete with actual quality. Small businesses are the artisans, the artists, and the people with passion. If we place regulations on them, we will be stuck with faceless corporations that don't care about the consumer, which is the true fear of any communist. So I challenge you, if you're watching this video, do research into the horrors of communism. Look inside and ask yourself why you want other people to determine your value in society. A government should not be looked at as a savior or a provider. You should want to provide for yourself and create the best future possible. Before you hear other people say things like, oh, capitalism is evil, stop and critically think why they feel that way. I also recommend that you study capitalism throughout history and look into the things that made America so prosperous. Capitalism is not about competition. It is about collaboration. People coming together to provide solutions for the world and being rewarded by the people who choose to purchase from them and work with them. Finally, if you want to find an enemy, the enemy is greed. Like I said, greed exists regardless of whatever economic structure you live in. It is a natural trait. People will always be willing to cut out morals and ethics at the expense of others for personal growth. When finding purpose in your life, think outwardly to helping people and not just growing yourself. Understand that we are free and our freedoms come from God and not the state. Find your higher purpose and be a light for the world. Do not let other people put you inside of a box. I hope you enjoyed this video. I know it's different from what I normally talk about at Privacy Academy, but we teach privacy for the sake of liberty. Liberty is under attack in many different ways right now, and we must come together to defend a legacy of freedom for our future generations. A big reason that capitalism and other ideals have been under attack is through the mass media manipulation that occurs nowadays on social media and other digital platforms. Instead of mass manipulation, modern devices are gathering an extreme amount of data on you and are using this to create a detailed profile on you. I know you understand algorithms and the data you were shown on your recommended or For You pages. This information is your tailored selection of propaganda. They know how to radicalize and spread the agenda. This is why we've seen the world become so divided. It is essential that you learn how to get private and protect your God-given liberties. The surveillance state is the greatest threat of this century. We need to come together and exit it. If you want to learn how to protect your freedom and privacy, click the link in the description and sign up for a free class on the top 5 tips to getting private and secure online. Thank you.